Iran's longest tunnel networks and largest underground missile arsenals were completely destroyed in seconds by the brutal brute force of American B-52 bombers. Massive 30,000-pound bunker buster bombs sealed off all entrances and exits inside the mountains in seconds. Those massive tunnels, hundreds of meters below ground, are now burning fiercely. Thousands of elite Iranian soldiers and tens of thousands of tons of missile ammunition are gone. They have nowhere to run. They cannot fire a missile, receive reinforcements, or communicate with the outside world. The regime's most powerful weapon, the famous missile cities, has become the greatest death trap in modern military history. The Epic Fury operation, which began on February 28, 2026, was a rare display of force in American aviation history. And the most devastating moment of this operation took place on March 2, 2026. The targets were the massive ballistic missile complexes carved into the mountains near Khorramabad in Lorestan province and Tabriz in East Azerbaijan province, which cost billions of dollars to build. The first target was the Khorramabad underground facility. Known as the Imam Ali Base, this facility was Iran's largest ballistic missile complex. A massive underground city consisting of tunnels ranging from 36 to 50 kilometers in length. A labyrinth where hundreds of Shahab-3 variant missiles were stored, launch pads were concealed, and ammunition depots were lined up. This was the backbone of Iran's regional deterrence. The operation was nearly impossible for a bomber like the B-52. However, Iran's air defense network, which relied on early warning radars based on copying technologies, was rendered blind in the first hours of the operation by simultaneous cyber attacks and electronic warfare elements. This initial phase prevented personnel hundreds of meters below ground from grasping the scale of the danger on the surface. With the radar screens blacked out, the Iranian military could not see the impending destruction, and its defense systems were disabled. When this window of complete vulnerability in the airspace opened for just 48 hours, the US Air Force deployed the B-52 Stratofortress, the heavyweight of its strategic bomber fleet, to strike Iran. On the night of March 2nd, bombardment salvos from B-52s descended like a nightmare upon the largest underground missile arsenal in Khorramabad. The operation's core architecture was based on a layered destruction strategy. In the first phase, B-2 Spirit aircraft silently infiltrated Iranian airspace and dropped 30,000-pound GBU-57 bunker-busting bombs on the targets. These bombs penetrated deep into the mountains, destroying the main doors and critical support columns in seconds. The aerodynamic design of the GBU-57 munitions, combined with gravitational acceleration, generates extraordinary kinetic energy. This energy, capable of penetrating 60 meters of reinforced concrete and hard rock, creates a seismic shockwave upon impact that causes irreparable structural cracks within the tunnel systems. Immediately afterwards, B-1 Lancer and B-52 Stratofortress aircraft arrived in the area. The B-1 Lancer aircraft, with their supersonic speeds, entered and exited the battlefield, hunting down mobile air defense batteries one by one. Subsequently, the B-52s blasted surface support buildings, ventilation shafts, communication antennas, and power transmission lines off the map, with thousands of pounds of JDAM smart munitions. More than 8 main tunnel entrances were crushed in seconds by bunker-busting bombs. GBU-57s plunged into the mountain, collapsing key passageways. The inner parts of the tunnels collapsed. Massive explosions ejected huge fireballs from inside the mountains to the outside. Heat signatures from NASA's firm satellite systems recorded extraordinary temperature increases in the area after the attack. The chain reaction explosion of ammunition depots inside the mountains created massive heat waves that reached the surface. Khorramabad fell. Iran's largest missile depot is now a pile of rubble. As Khorramabad burned, the Tabriz silo complex in East Azerbaijan province shared the same fate. This facility, with its 100-kilometer-long tunnel network, was the main source of Iran's retaliatory missiles fired at Erbil and the region. With the longest tunnel network, this facility was Iran's second-largest missile arsenal. It had already suffered heavy damage during the June 2025 operations, but the regime had rebuilt it. During the first wave of attacks on February 28th to March 1st, the entrances and support points of the underground tunnel network were buried under intense bombardment. The massive compartments inside the facilities may have protected the missiles from complete destruction, but with the ventilation, electrical, and elevator systems destroyed, the missiles and personnel inside were physically unable to reach the surface. They could not fire missiles, dig tunnels, or communicate with the outside world. Imagine, you are in a tunnel 80 meters underground, in the dark, without air, shaken by bombs. And above them, US surveillance planes circle 24/7. Every movement is detected instantly. If someone tries to open an entrance, a GBU-57 will land on that spot within minutes. And here's the most terrifying detail. According to intelligence reports, between 1,000 and 1,500 Revolutionary Guard military personnel stationed at these two facilities, Khorramabad and Tabriz, were left in absolute darkness and suffocation hundreds of meters underground when the tunnel covers collapsed on top of them. This figure is only for these two facilities. When considering all the dozens of underground bases across the country, the picture is much more dire. It is reported that there are nearly 100 underground facilities across the country. This means that an estimated 250,000 military personnel could be deployed in Iran's underground bases. Iran's total military strength is approximately 960,000 personnel. This means that nearly 1/3 of the army is underground. 1/4 of a 960,000-strong army being trapped in their own shelters rather than on the battlefield is an unprecedented situation in modern warfare history. Generals have fled. Over 50 high-ranking commanders have been eliminated. Barracks have been emptied. Iran never anticipated this scenario. But it doesn't end there. Preparations on the ground point to a much larger wave to come. The economic and asymmetric intelligence displayed by the US in this process further deepens the scale of the event. In the first wave, billions of dollars worth of B-2 aircraft were used to blind radars and air defense systems. However, after the gates were broken, the old but deadly B-52 Stratofortress aircraft took the stage. Another strategic dimension of the incident is the involvement of British bases. The US administration deployed 3 B-52H heavy bomber aircraft to the RAF Fairford base in the UK. This move proves that Operation Epic Fury is not a short-term raid, but a long-term operational campaign. Using closer bases such as the UK and Diego Garcia, instead of flying from across the ocean, will significantly increase the number of sorties. American bombers have begun to maintain a constant presence in Iranian airspace on a rotating basis. This creates uninterrupted psychological and military pressure on the Tehran regime. Aircraft poised to drop bombs at any moment are wiped out, the military personnel's hopes of regrouping. The UK's approval of airspace access also signals that the international diplomatic front has united against Iran and that Tehran's strategic isolation is deepening. Why were B-52s from the 1960s used instead of B-2 aircraft? Because while the operational cost of a B-2 aircraft runs into hundreds of thousands of dollars, the flight hour cost of a B-52 is around $70,000. Once air superiority was secured, there was no longer a need for expensive stealth technology. The B-52s served as flying arsenals with their massive ammunition capacities. These giants, cruising freely in the sky, relentlessly delivered cheap but effective blows to every target attempting to surface from underground. This situation clearly demonstrated how a cost-effective war machine could also economically strangle the enemy. This developing asymmetry is also a signal that the US could sustain the operation for weeks. So why is this massive destruction so important? Looking at the ripple effect, we understand that the issue is not just about a few collapsed tunnels. The heart of Iran's military doctrine was built on the concept of missile cities. Indeed, they had been preparing for this moment for 40 years. They dug hundreds of kilometers of tunnels into the mountains. They buried thousands of ballistic missiles, launch pads, ammunition depots, and command centers 80 to 90 meters underground. They called this the missile cities. Silos in Khorramabad, 50-kilometer tunnel networks in Khorramabad, 100-kilometer corridors in Tabriz, missile storage canyons in Shiraz. Each one is an underground city. The regime was so confident in this that it called on its people to prepare for a long war of 5 years. The striking of the Khorramabad and Tabriz complexes led to an unprecedented humanitarian tragedy and logistical disaster within the Revolutionary Guard Corps. Collapsing mountain masses left over 1,000 elite personnel working at these facilities trapped hundreds of meters underground. The immediate military consequences of this operation are presenting themselves as a logistical choke point. The closure of the facility's entrances prevented missiles from being brought to the surface. According to CENTCOM's official statement, just 4 days after the Epic Fury operation began on February 28th, as of March 4th, Iran's ballistic missile launches decreased by 86%, and one-way attack drone launches decreased by 73%. Admiral Brad Cooper announced that over 1,700 targets had been struck. A significant portion of Iran's missile stockpiles and UAV munitions were destroyed. In short, Iran has lost its ability to retaliate. Every ramp attempting to launch missiles from the mountains was destroyed within minutes by US drones and fighter jets waiting overhead. Every target that emerged to fire was immediately hunted down. From a tactical standpoint, the simultaneous use of 3 different bomber aircraft with perfect synchronization requires advanced planning skills. When the stealth of the B-2s, the speed of the B-1s, and the massive munitions capacity of the B-52s came together, Iran's military infrastructure was literally wiped out. US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth summed up the situation in a single sentence. "This was never a fair fight. We're punching them while they're down." Looking at the bigger picture, the domino effect of this collapse will shake regional balances. Iran's proxy forces, which it calls and funds as the Axis of Resistance, are watching in horror as their main headquarters suffer heavy damage. When the flow of supplies and ammunition is cut off, these proxy forces' chances of holding their ground rapidly diminish. With the protective umbrella damaged,